Delaware County native Kaloni Davis is a writer, actor, and director from Philadelphia now, but Delaware County originally, who often uses his talents to positively represent images of Black boys and men, or to shed light on the challenges that Black boys and men face in America. Kaloni has produced several projects, including The Visit, a 2010 film, and a series called Last Days, The Saga, Torment, and that's in 2013. He's published a comic book also related to the Last Days series. Most recently, his project has been The Evaluation, a short psychological thriller focused on the negative perceptions of Black men walking through their daily lives. Let's take a look at that.
I'll be recording today's session. Is that okay?
Sure.
I want to talk to you about the people who keep bothering you.
Who? These people here?
No, the other people. The ones who won't shut up.
Oh, them. What about them?
When did you first notice them?
Not too long after I got here.
Not before?
Not that I can remember.
And what do they say to you?
All types of shit.
Do they tell you to do things?
Sometimes.
Bad things?
Sometimes.
Do you listen?
Sometimes.
Are they in here right now?
Mm-hmm.
And are they talking to you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are they saying?
They talking about you.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
What are they saying?
Wow, that's great. You are making headway in terms of getting great projects out there, projects that represent Black men excellently, and projects that just showcase your talent.
Trying.
I'm trying to get the word out about you, but also make people in this county and in the burbs and in the entire metropolitan area of Philadelphia proud. So I really appreciate you coming here
Thanks for having me,
on the main line today.
This is dope.
Excellent. Now, tell us a little bit more about The Evaluation.
So the Evaluation is a short film. I've actually been touring with it recently, using it as a talking piece, and I'll tell you why in a moment, but using it as a talking piece to discuss things like the negative perceptions of Black men and mental health. So the story is about a psychiatrist who in the middle of the night gets a phone call from the court asking him to do a last-minute evaluation on an inmate who is on trial for murdering his wife. And so the psychiatrist takes the job, meets the inmate at like an institution, and he sits down. He has 3 sessions with him, and during these sessions, the inmate, the Black guy, is exhibiting signs of schizophrenia. And as the 3 sessions play out, without spoiling the story, things begin to unravel when the psychiatrist finds out that the inmate knows personal information about his life.
So he's got insider knowledge about the
doctor's life,
who's coming to get insider knowledge on him.
And
get him to reveal things.
Right. And so now it starts to get the tables begin to turn. It starts to get psychologically
interesting,
twisty and turny. And so it's deliberate that the inmate is black and the psychiatrist is white. And so I don't want to say too much more about it.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, you've got intriguing plots and really interesting characterizations in most of your projects. Another project that you have is called The Visit, where the main character named Derek is an immoral Philadelphia lawyer.
Yep.
He's finding it hard to get a good night's sleep. Why can't the brother sleep?
Yeah, so the film is called The Visit, and I gotta say this, I feel like I have to say this all the time. Not to be confused with M. Night Shyamalan's film, also called The Visit, right? I say that a lot, and people are like, wait, isn't that M. Night Shyamalan's film? And I'm like, no, I made mine first. But anyway, I always gotta say that. And I love M. Night too. He was one of my favorites.
Another local excellent filmmaker.
Yeah. But anyway, he's the main character is an immoral Philadelphia high-powered lawyer who is defending a criminal. But he's doing all types of things that he shouldn't be doing as a lawyer. He's treating his wife terrible. He's treating his mom terrible. He's not living right. And so as a result, he's experiencing what's called sleep paralysis.
Sleep paralysis.
And
a CPAP machine won't do the trick.
CPAP machine won't do the trick. So I don't know if you understand how sleep paralysis works.
Tell me more.
But there's a scientific explanation, but then there's also a folklore explanation, right? And this is what drew me to it, right? So the scientific explanation for it is that when we sleep, our brain secretes a chemical that runs through our bodies that keep us from getting up and living our dreams out, walking around and things like that. And so to a degree, it kind of like paralyzes us.
Okay,
right?
we stay immobile while our brains are still working.
While we're asleep, right? And so sometimes when our sleep schedules are off, right? It can happen to anybody, right? It can happen when, we're working on a big project and our sleep schedule changes, or we're staying up late at night for some reason, or we're in some way, shape or form, it changes. What happens is that chemical will still be running through our bodies when we wake up.
Interesting.
And we awake and we can't move, right? And it's a terrible feeling. It causes anxiety and sometimes hallucinations, audible and visual, right? I've had it before, and it is terrifying.
Wow.
Right. So that's the medical or scientific explanation for it. The folklore explanation for it is a witch or a devil riding your back. Right.
A witch or a devil is riding your back. And
right.
So tell me more about this.
So what happens is, in the folklore version, right, when we are experiencing sleep paralysis and we open our eyes, we can't move, right? But it also feels like if you're laying on your stomach, it also feels like a weight
pressing down on you.
If you're laying on your back, it feels like a weight pressing on your chest. There's actually a famous painting that depicts
this
sleep paralysis. I don't know the name of it or who the artist is, but
and so maybe
we could show it on the on the screen, because I'll send it to you. It's where this story comes from. And so one of the most famous hallucinations that comes along with sleep paralysis is something called the shadow man.
Okay.
If you ever look this up, there's videos on it on YouTube. You can look it up online. It's the shadow man, and the people who describe the shadow man, they all describe the same image. It's a tall, lengthy silhouette of a humanoid person, sometimes wearing a hat, that's in the room just watching you.
Wow. So that sounds.
And many of people who have experienced sleep paralysis say that they've seen the same thing. And so when I learned about this, I was like, ooh, if this is not a film, I don't know what is, right? So I turned it into a film, but I used that film to kind of, the message in it is that this guy is living an immoral life. And as a result, he's being haunted by this shadow man.
So you've got a nice metaphor there that you can represent visually in your film.
And it's kind of compelling him to change his ways, like do better.
In terms of getting stories from folklore, stories from psychology, stories from
I love
the
psychology.
medical field.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've gotten in your lifetime an opportunity to read a lot, and you've got a curiosity that's driven you to different areas.
Yes.
What are the sources of inspiration for you? And also just in terms of basic background,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your education. Tell us how you've both become interested in these different areas, but also how'd you learn to become a filmmaker?
So I went to Temple University. I graduated from Temple University with a degree in film. But even before that, I attended Creative and Performing Arts High School. Shout out to Kappa, because without that place, I wouldn't be the filmmaker that I am.
You are, yeah.
Most of who I am as an artist and as a storyteller, even as an actor, I got from Kappa.
Wow.
Going to college sharpened it, kind of gave me a more mature grasp of the art, but it all began with high school.
Wow.
Trained under a very prominent acting coach named Mel Williams, who teaches some Hollywood actors right now. He was my high school teacher.
Wow.
Right.
And so did you want to be an actor before a director?
Yes, I wanted to be an actor. Well, I still consider myself an actor.
All right.
Right. But I do more storytelling and directing today. But the bug is never going to leave me. Right. So I started out in doing theater, and drama. Traveled in some theaters as a teenager. I did a lot of theater work in the city. And I even performed in some off-Broadway shows in New York.
Yeah. Which ones?
So
You can name drop.
So under my acting coach, Theater for a New Generation, T-Fang, we worked under some show. I worked under him and did some showcases in New York, right off Broadway. Really enjoyed that. But somewhere along the way, I had some video production courses in Kappa in high school, and I fell in love with the idea of creating my own worlds. And so here's the thing. It's actually relative to our topic of the show. I realized early on that as a Black actor, there were not a lot of diverse roles available for me. I realized that auditioning as a Black actor, the roles I typically were offered were like thug number one, thug number two, the guy in the background selling chips. It was like really corny stuff, right?
Who were the actors who you looked up to? And then were you seeing them also being forced to play those kinds of roles, or were they getting to play some of those kinds of roles and not stuck in that lane also?
Yeah, so the actors I looked up to were the ones who broke out of that boundary.
Like who?
Right? Oh, I gotta say Denzel, right? Gotta say Denzel, gotta say Sidney Poitier. The Morgan Freemans, even Will Smith, right? He has accomplished some amazing things as a drama actor and as an action star.
Yes.
Wesley Snipes, right? These are the people like. So one of my favorite genres is action.
All right.
I have to give so much credit to Wesley Snipes.
For which films? For TV shows?
Passenger 57, for his action work.
Yes.
Right? So let's not get it twisted. Wesley Snipes is a good actor in general, right?
Absolutely.
But his work in the world of action,
Blade,
Passenger 57, for me, it was the first time that I saw, of course I got to give my credit to the Jim Kellys and,
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying, back in the day, but that was before my time, right?
Yes.
When I was growing up, Wesley was Jim Kelly for me, right? And I was like, yo.
So the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah, Blade changed the game for me.
Did you go to the gym? Did you work out? Did you run? Were you an athlete in high school or college? Or
so before I went to Kappa, I played football. I was a running back, right? But as a theater major at Kappa, one of the most important facets to our regiment was working out, because our bodies are our instruments. Right, that's what they taught us. It was like you need to be in shape because you have to be able to perform. And as an actor, they taught us everything: singing, dance, theater, also tap, right?
Tap dance as well.
Tap dance is part of it. Yeah, I got that from high school. Like that place
I
changed my
know that
life.
Dule Hill is a very practiced and trained tap dancer.
Yeah.
Before he was on Psych, before he was on The West Wing.
Yeah.
And he recently came to People's Light Theater in Malvern to do a one-man
Wow.
show as Nat King Cole.
Mm-hmm.
And so dancing, classical dance, tap, and those sorts of things are in his repertoire. You had to learn tap, and you had to be physically fit at.
I didn't have to learn tap. I chose it, right? So there was like tracks, right? We could do ballet.
Mm-hmm.
We could do tap. I think hip hop was a part of it. I was always drawn to tap, so I was like, that's what I want to do. So I focused my energy on that too.
That's great. Now,
I'm in no way an
when did
expert.
things-
I'm not a master, but I can do it for sure.
When did things switch to getting behind the camera for you? And what was it? Was it the editing? Was it the cinematography that drew Kaloni?
Yeah. So I started out by saying I realized that my roles were limited as an actor, right? And so that was the first thing that compelled me to sit down and start writing, creating my own stories. In my video production class, my teacher, Mr. Redondo, Fran Redondo, shout out to Fran if he's ever sees this. He instilled in us the power of storytelling, right? And I was like, I absolutely fell in love with it, right? But not just the storytelling, the cinematography, the editing. I mean, part of our class would be, we would come in and literally just watch movies. And then when the movie was over, he would break them down to us. Why we enjoyed it. Why did it work? Why did some parts not work, right? And so I began to understand the craft as a teenager, like really understand the craft as a teenager. And I was like, this is what I want to go to school for.
Now, the films you've made have mixed genres. What's difficult or interesting about shooting action scenes as compared to someone getting attacked in one of your horror shorts?
So an action scene, depending on the style of action. Oh man, you about to
Talk about the styles that you've had your actors fight within, combat within.
So I'm a huge kung fu movie fan, right? So I grew up on it, right? And I actually literally come from a fighting family, right? So
say more about that.
So my family, down from my oldest brother to my grandfather, boxers, right? And so my brother trained me how to box early, like 5.
Wow.
Right? And so one day he sat me down and was like, I want you to sit down and watch this dude. Because he knew I like movies, right?
Okay.
One day he sat me down, was like, I want you to sit down and watch this dude. Watch his footwork. Watch how he holds his hands. And it was Bruce Lee.
And you're 5 years old looking at
Well, I was a little older
at the time.
by then, but I was like mesmerized by his movement. Then I learned that Bruce got a lot of his stuff from Ali, right?
Wow.
And I was
Fascinating.
I was sold. And so then I went from Ali to Bruce to Jackie Chan to Shaw Brothers to, you know what I mean? So I'm like, by the time I become a filmmaker myself and I'm shooting my own stuff, right? I had studied martial arts, grew up on boxing, and I began learning how to choreograph from watching so many films.
Interesting.
And then I began choreographing my own fight scenes.
Wow.
The film that triggered me to become a choreographer was Mortal Kombat.
Video games to film, mixing your
when the movie
boxing background and your visual training watching.
It all makes up who I am. So when the film Mortal Kombat came out, I was like, all right, I have to do this. So I started choreographing fight scenes on stage first.
Interesting.
And then it switched from on stage to camera. And so I know you asked me a specific question about the styles of action, right? So there's shoot 'em up action. There's fisticuffs action, like the John Wayne sock 'em. You know what I mean? And then there's the intricate, clever martial arts stuff, right? So, and you have to shoot all of them differently, right? Like shoot 'em up action with the explosions and stuff like that is typically shot and edited at a faster pace.
Okay.
The Hong Kong style of kung fu is typically longer takes and wider shots because you want to see the full expression of the body.
Interesting.
Right? If you take a kung fu scene and you chop it up and you shoot it close, you don't get to see the beauty of the movement. Right? So you tend to have to back up and get the full, you know what I mean?
Range.
And so fisticuffs, the John Wayne style of like, punch him in the face, knock him down, throw him over.
The Westerns.
Yeah, the Western styles. That is, I would say that's closer to the shoot 'em up action, the way that you shoot it.
Do you have a preference for which you like to stage and shoot?
Hong Kong.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference for which you like to perform as an actor?
Hong Kong. Give me Jackie Chan, man. Jackie Chan influenced me in such a way that he infused comedy,
yes,
traditional kung fu, and stunts in such a way where it was like you could see his influence of Buster Keaton, right?
Interesting.
And even one of my favorite current action stars today is Tom Cruise.
Really?
Yeah, I love that dude.
He does, I hear, many of his own stunts.
All of them. Yeah. He himself has said he was heavily influenced by Buster Keaton, Jackie Chan.
Interesting.
Yeah.
If
likewise, so have I been.
Absolutely. And so when you share those things with us, it makes me aware of how you can represent on film and on stage movements, images, strength, integrity, and people who are having issues regarding integrity.
Yeah.
If you combine that with the habitus, the body, Lloyd would call it the habitus. If you put those characteristics inside of a black body and you put it on screen, what are the combinations of things that make for a positive representation in your opinion? What is it that we have been seeing in film that you've been disappointed with in terms of the representations of black boys and men, and in your own films and in films that you think are positively representative of black male images, black male strength, black male character? What comes to mind for you?
The positive, like what have I seen in film that's like, that
works.
I
like that. That's representative in a way that affirms black identity in a way that you like.
So again, one of the I gotta use Wesley as an example, right? Because most of the time we get an action film, right? The hero is like a square chin white guy, right, who has all the answers, and the people around him, people of color and the women, right? If you watch certain movies, like sometimes the people around him don't even have enough wherewithal to like run when there's danger, right? And it's like this, our square chin white hero even has to say that. Run for everybody to start moving.
Even though there's fire, even though there are gunshots.
It's like, come on, guys, we gotta go now. It's like
everyone.
In real life, nobody's waiting for you to say that, man. Right? And one of the things that disappoints me, and I'm gonna get back to Wesley in a second.
Sure.
One of the things that disappoints me about the typical black man in like disaster films or action films, the black man is usually weak or scared for no reason, right? You get that like Richard Pryor, like, you know what I mean? He's always scared, oh my God, right? And it's like, what? Wow. I see it now, like even current, right? I watch movies like Jurassic Park, and it's like the black guys are usually like, "Wah!" Like the young man literally screams like a woman, right? And it's like, my goodness, come on, man. You know what I mean? And so one of the things I appreciated about Wesley is that he portrayed like a strong, sober-minded, level-headed, well-thought-out hero.
So whether it's White Men Can't Jump, whether it's New Jack City, whether it's Passenger 57, he was in control of himself and his environment, right? And he was strong. That's the other thing. He was strong, right? And he understood how to navigate through the world he was in, right? And so
seeing a man like that on camera that looks like me was inspiring, right? Watching Will do it, watching Denzel do it, right? It was like, yeah, I want more of those representations.
Absolutely.
But if you ask somebody to name, if you ask somebody, another black man to name their inspirations, they're typically going to name the same people. And so the problem that I have with that is that there's not enough, right? I shouldn't be limited to naming the same 4 or 5 people every time that question comes up.
Right.
Right.
And in terms of films in the last, I would say 10, 15 years, because Spike Lee's of the world laid a foundation, because Hudlin Brothers, because John Singleton laid a foundation, we've had in the last 10, 15 years, a lot of films in theater, but also on the streaming services that have all black casts. Are you seeing black artists give us diverse depictions of black boys and men? And are you satisfied with those diverse depictions? Or what would you say about the industry in the last 10 years?
I think the depictions are becoming more and more diverse, but I think it's because there are more black storytellers now. Right?
So that writing piece.
That's where it begins. It begins on the page, right? There are more black writers and directors, specifically the directors, who have either kicked the door in or have been allowed in, right, and given an opportunity, and they take it and they go, all right, I'm gonna take my style of storytelling and I'm gonna put black people in front of the camera, and I'm gonna depict them in a way that we haven't seen as often, and I appreciate that. Whether I like the film or not, I appreciate that aspect of it. And it needs to continue to happen, right?
In terms of our success stories regarding those things, the Cosby Show, A Different World, gave us that in the 80s and the 90s.
Absolutely.
We already named some of the filmmakers and films of the 90s coming in. And one of the people we've got to talk about is Will Smith, because he's the biggest star out of Philadelphia for sure.
Yeah.
But also because the real life drama that our actors may engage in is talked about beside their performances.
Yeah.
We can't say that Will Smith hasn't gotten accolades. He's the first rapper to win a Grammy Award. He is a 2-time Oscar Award winner. And unfortunately, most recently, the night he wins the award, before he wins the award, he engages in one of the most controversial acts that's ever been shown on television.
Right.
So we're talking about the slap. We're talking about Will Smith going up on stage to slap Chris Rock. And so my narrative of the sequence of events is a black director is hosting the Oscars for the first time. Will Smith is nominated that night playing a black father of 2 fantastic black athletes, Venus and Serena Williams.
So sad, man.
And later that night he wins. But in between, Chris Rock is hosting the show again. And Chris Rock, I will describe as is a person who has a mean comedy style. If we put Rodney Dangerfield, if we put Dave Chappelle, if we put Louis C.K. in a box, we could call them mean comics in the sense that they'll make jokes that sting, that offend, and then they'll try to win the audiences back. This is my description.
Because they also educate you.
And so the night of the Oscars slap, Chris makes a joke about Will's wife, Jada Smith, an actress in her own right, and she reacts to it. Will at first laughs, then sees her reaction, then stops laughing. Will goes to the stage. Will yells, "Keep my wife's name out of your MFing mouth," repeatedly. And then Will goes to the stage and slaps Chris. Because he doesn't keep her name out of his mouth. And then Will goes and sits back down, and later he wins. Afterward, I have read he goes to the Oscars party and dances. And afterward, he apologizes a number of times. He's suspended from the Oscars for a decade.
Apologize to Chris
He apologized. He says he apologized. He says he made phone calls to try to apologize to Chris. Chris didn't receive them.
Okay.
He makes videos apologizing.
Right.
And Chris Rock does not respond at all. Many comedians, Black Twitter responds incessantly. And we get to this year, a year later, Chris Rock releases his Netflix special called Selective Outrage, where he has the final 10 or 12 minutes addressing
all about Will Smith.
All about Will Smith and the slap and their relationship.
Right.
For better or for worse, we as Black men have had to deal with and discuss the image of us, but also the reality of that relationship between them. And I want to know what your thoughts are about the situation, because it impacts other discussions about, well, what is, quote unquote, an image of a Black person, a Black man that's good or problematic or bad. So what are your thoughts on it? And we'll just talk about this for a while. And obviously I've got Will's memoir that he released a year before that incident on the desk. And it is the 50th year of hip hop. And that's why I've got this here, because that has played such a role in how people talk about Black men, even though this is music. What are your thoughts on the incident at the Oscars?
So I think it's actually, we could go full circle and kind of connect it to one of the major topics in The Evaluation, my most recent film, right? And that is mental health, right? And I'm gonna put a pin there and come back to that, right? So I have the perception of Black men in media, right? One of my acting coach that I mentioned earlier, he said one of the things he taught us is that if it happens in real life, it belongs on stage, right? So I have no desire to paint any one group of people as, when we say good, as like perfect, right? The problem that I have with the way Black men are depicted in media is that it's typically one-sided, right? In reality, we're human, right? And with humanity comes multiple facets, right? We've seen Will be funny.
Yes.
We've seen him be the good guy.
Yes.
We've seen him save the world, right? We've seen him give us some really emotional performances on his TV show with Fresh Prince, right? And we all know Will to be the good guy, the nice guy, right? But in reality, if we're honest, we know that everybody has their moments. I could say something to you right now that could trigger you and might make you want to slap me. Right? We're all human, right? And so I think, now I'm going to go back and grab the mental health piece, right? So we know from reading his book that Will's going through some stuff with his personal life, some trauma that he grew up with, right? Some stuff between him and his marriage, him and his wife in his marriage. And they brought that to the public eye on YouTube. I think that takes an immense amount of courage and vulnerability and transparency to do that, right? So if you ask me, I commend him for doing that, right? Now, when Will got up and smacked him, he broke. He's human, right? When we do it though, when Black men do it, it's real life. It's real life, but it's in the public eye, it's the worst thing in the world, right? Like I've seen, you ever heard hear that saying, like spazzing out and losing your cool is a white man's privilege?
I've heard that.
Right? Like they get to do that and then go back to normal life. We do it and it's like, oh no, how could you, right? Now,
reputation is damaged and other consequences may ensue.
Right. So we have to play this this game in order to make it to a certain stratosphere where we can't make any mistakes. We've seen Barack go through it, right? We can't make any mistakes.
It's supposed to be the perfect president.
Yeah, and we know Obama was in that White House. You know it, man. Stressing, but he did such a good job at keeping his cool. Right. And that's why we love him so much.
Absolutely.
Right. But in reality, we are all human. Will had a moment. He broke. Am I justifying it? No, absolutely not. But we know from reading his book, he's going through some stuff.
Yes.
And he was transparent about that.
Absolutely.
And Chris Rock got up and triggered him.
The interconnection between making film, making products, making art that represents black men and boys well sits alongside the lived reality of black men. And I think the two things with you in the mix are really healthy. I love that you're talking about mental health. I love that you're talking about being physically strong. I love that you're talking about discipline. I love that you're talking about being of service to communities that have raised you up and also that you've moved into as an adult. And so I just want to applaud you. I just want to say keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I want to say thanks for being on Men on the Main Line today.
Thanks for
I really
having me.
appreciate it, Kaloni. You're welcome.
Bruh, thanks for having me, bruh.
You're welcome. So everybody, I appreciate you tuning in. There are going to be more conversations along these lines soon. I look forward to you tuning in again. Thank you.